Hey, it's Tommy Allen from TommyAllenMusic.com, and this week we have Mike Thorne. Come check it out. So thanks for being in the chair. Thanks for coming along this week and giving me a look at your time. So let's start. Where was you born? How old are you?
Do you want my national insurance number as well?
Yeah, if you got it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll give you the debit card. It won't do a lot of good. I was born in Yorkshire,
Okay.
about 40 odd years ago. But
So we're
we
similar
travelled
age,
around.
are we?
Yeah, I'm 41, so I was born in
Oh, I'm older than
79.
you then. Blimey, I'm 42.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't show, Tommy. I grew up in the southeast in Kent, so that I guess that's kind of where I've been for the longest time. Yeah.
And I first met you when you helped me out of a situation back, I think it was 2004, 2005, roughly, the second
With
album.
Studholme, yeah.
Yeah, I
Down
needed
at
a
the
drummer urgently, and because Studholme knew you and that and got in touch. But always knew you as a drummer from that point. Never ever thought of you as an engineer, which will lead into. So
Yeah, well, I used to go around there a lot and make the tea and make a nuisance of myself. And yeah, Dick was great. I credit him a lot with me getting into studios. Way back then.
right.
His studio was wonderful, wasn't it? It
Mm,
was like a barn with a high ceiling, very relaxed kind of vibe.
yeah.
Um,
So who was you gigging with then?
so back then, it would have been a wonderful guy called Jeremiah Marks. You
Yeah,
familiar with
yeah,
Jerry?
yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah,
the Essex way, wasn't it?
he was. Yeah, he passed on a few years ago.
Yeah, he's a Rasta singer and that, wasn't he?
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I met him through Stevie Weston,
yeah.
who's a great harp player who you know, and Pete Nash, who was just a brilliant engineer and keyboard player. So I did a lot of stuff with Pete, but unfortunately he's gone as well. It'd be 10 years ago this month. Yeah, but and I think just on the blues scene really is how I got into it because I was brought up on that. I mean, anything kind of after 1954 in the house when I was growing up from my dad Phil was kind of frowned on a little bit. So, I'd be going to school and I'd know all these old blues records, but nothing that was really current, you know.
And did your
Which
dad
is
play?
cool. Yeah, he does play. He plays slide guitar. He's got a beautiful touch and real passion for the music, which comes over. He's great. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. And what does he think of all this, like the studio and that? Is he loving it?
Well, my folks have been so supportive over the years, from driving me around when I was a kid playing in youth orchestras as a trombonist to, gigs before I could drive to, helping a lot with this place. So, I mean, it wouldn't have happened without their support, that's for sure. Both me and my man, yeah, they've been great. I think you need that. Everybody needs a start with something, and then you have to kind of take what you get and run with it, really.
Is drums still a big part of your life? You still drumming a
It
lot?
is, yeah. I mean, I'm the studio and engineering is what I do day to day now. But up until lockdown, yeah, I was still playing a lot. I mean, I still up until the end of last year, I'd been with Stevie Weston for probably 10, 12 years. Been with Paul Lamb and the King Snakes, who obviously you know Paul because you had them. I did a couple of years stint with him 10 years ago and then left as the studio. This version of the studio came online and joined up with him again a couple of years ago when Dino, um, his drummer in the intervening period, moved away. So yeah, I'm doing that in Chad. And I mean, I'm missing not being on the road. I met my girlfriend Petra through the gig with Paul. Um, and I enjoy all the parts of it. I enjoy the travel, the playing, and I think it's important if you're in. I mean, this is also my home, the studio. It's a separate, it's got a separate entrance, but it is a live work kind of thing. And I think it's important to get away, And you know what music's like, Tommy. If it's in you, it's in you, isn't it?
Yeah,
You,
yeah, yeah.
you want to play. It's good for the soul, really.
You obviously got a passion for the recording, and because you've gone into it in a big way, ain't you?
I absolutely love it. Yeah, I wouldn't do one without the other. They're so entwined. Um, so the playing side, I love it when I come back, but the playing side is also a good break from the studio side as well. It's all music for me, whether it's playing or editing something or mixing or mastering something or pre-production. or just hanging out with musicians when they arrive. It's all part of the same thing. I've never drawn a line between any of it. I I think a lot of people are like that when they're into it, isn't it?
Yeah. And the birth of Rimshot Studios was April 2012. Is that right?
Well, actually, a little earlier, but this version of the studio, yeah, which is kind of the place with the bigger live room and everything. But I had a smaller studio with pretty much all the same gear in 2004, 2005, and actually the first album I did was a Matt Schofield one with I forget what it's called. It's the first one he did, which is basically a live album of his trio with Johnny Henderson and Evan Jenkins, and we recorded it over in at a blues club for Richard Pavitt, who's a great guy. He runs New Gene Records. He's brilliant. So we did that, and then that led to doing a full-on album for Matt and Ian Siegel's Meat and Potatoes album. And I was working. Pete Nash came, and so we were literally working in an attic space above offices, so we could only work from like kind of 5 o'clock through to 4 in the morning. And it was August time. The temperature was like this, and it was the control room was basically a converted closet. You know, we had a curtain you could pull across. It was all very Heath Robinson. And I remember I just got Pro Tools, which is a recording system. And with the first session we were using, I can say this now because it's years ago, but the first session Pete and I were using it on was Ian Siegel's. And so Ian would be like, oh yeah, we just want to drop in that other vocal. And I'd been working on tape up to the time. So it was like, oh great, well, do you guys want to have a cuppa for a few minutes or a beer or something, and we'll be ready for that. So we do that and we get the manual out, and it was terrible. But it was great as well, you know. And I think Ian had a twinkle in his eye. He knew what was going on, and it turned out really good. Apart from the heat.
And then that led to the new one. Then obviously you took the other one down and built from start.
Yeah, I wanted to build this place for about 10 years. This was always what I wanted to build. The other was a stepping stone to doing this. So everything throughout my 20s, although I was still playing, was kind of around setting this place up. So yeah, it's been a passion for a long time.
Yeah, but you demolished the other place and then built that one fresh.
Well, no, the other place, the other place is a building that's still there, but this is literally built from the ground up,
right, okay.
In the gardens of what was that place. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long was that in the building?
So the building was a couple of years, but I was thinking about this the other day because when people come in, they always say, "Oh, when did you build the place?" You know, and it was a couple of years to build, and then it was about 2 or 3 years to get the planning permission, and then there was and obviously there's the build up to getting the planning permission, which took time, and then there was an intervening period where we'd got the planning permission, but the money that we lined up to do it had fallen through with a bank that we were borrowing from. And they put a 3-year limit on the planning permission. So we had to break ground, get some foundations in just to secure it and then carry on. So yeah, it's been a bit of a mission, but I'm kind of here now, and you know, it's working, thankfully.
And did you have any teams in specially to sort out like the acoustics and all that stuff?
Yeah, I met a wonderful guy called Kevin Van Green who runs Green and Green Audio. A few years before that, he sold me a 1-inch 8-track tape machine, an old Studer thing, big as a washing machine. And I bought one of these a few years previously and got really ripped off. And Kev just kind of held my hand through it, and he was available. He just sold me some gear. He didn't need to do any follow-up, but he was just, you know, every now and then we'd speak and he was interested. And when this finally became a reality, it felt like he was the guy to go to because he'd built some amazing studios. And the thing that ran through them all is they all felt homely and comfortable. They didn't feel kind of officey and corporate, and you know, there's a place for all of that. But I just wanted somewhere that felt, you know, if you came to record here, you'd come into a living room that just happens to have really good acoustics and gear. So if you wanted to play an acoustic guitar thing, you could sit on the sofa having a cup of coffee or a beer, and we'd put the mics over you, and you know, it'd be great. And so Kev was able to take care of all the acoustics side in a way that kind of, it didn't really intrude on the space, which I think is a real talent, you know.
And then 2014, then is that when the doors opened?
Well, so 2012 is kind of when the doors opened initially, but we had this huge problem with the builder. So when you build a studio, you build it, you probably know because you've got one you sat in one. You build it with fairly conventional building techniques, but you have to alter some of them in certain ways to make it work. And we just thought, I hold my hands up to some of it. I wasn't around as much as I should have been, but we got fairly well done over. And so we had to close, we opened up, and then we had to totally move out for 6 months. While we had all the equipment leases and the mortgage, it's our home as well. So we had to move out of that and basically find a different team, and start over again. So if you can imagine commissioning in a studio, even just the wiring and stuff, and then you've got builders coming back in to make stuff soundproof where it should be and sort out electrics and things. You've literally got to tear everything out, move it into storage, and start again. So we did that, and that was a pretty tough period, if I'm honest. It came very close to the wire financially and in every other sense. But yeah, 2013, 2014 is when stuff started to come together. And certainly the last 18 months, 2 years, I think it's just kind of taken off. I've put aside my view of what it should be and just been much more open-minded, and there have been some amazing projects coming through. And the one thing that's run through is that pretty much everyone that's been in has kind of heard about it and sorted out, for what it is. And that means that everyone we work with has just been wonderful. Hand on heart, I can say that. So yeah, it's I don't know what's going to happen post lockdown. I don't think anybody does, but for the moment, just kind of enjoying the ride, really. There's good days and bad days, of course, with everything, but yeah.
What's been some of your best memories so far then?
Well, it's a lot of it has been the moments you get when you're working with people. If you're working with people on an extended time, it's like if you're on tour, isn't it? It's not just the gigs, it's the hanging out and stuff like that. So there's a lot of that. I suppose getting to master an album for the brand new Heavies was a really nice one, and working with Dean and Eddie and Dom at Acid Jazz, because that's a really lovely label, and I seem to do a lot of work for them, which is great. Recording strings here has been wonderful. Do a lot of stuff with string quartets and things. We had Katie Tunstall in with a brilliant lineup for a single towards the end of last year, and that was great. So there's been a whole range of stuff, and also working with kids as well. Bands that are coming in who are more at the beginning stage of things, and their enthusiasm is just addictive.
Yeah. And so, what are you doing any tutorial stuff?
I'm just dipping my toe into it, actually. Yeah. Funnily enough, some stuff with Mike Exeter, who obviously a wonderful guy called Robbie Dwyer, Russ Cottier, who's a great producer as well up in Liverpool, and Mike Banks, who runs the recordproduction.com site. So it's kind of early days, but we're working on something that should feel quite collaborative and involving for the students on it. So what it will be, I don't know yet. Quite. We've had a few dry runs. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's me. So yeah.
And who have you got on the horizon? Any for recording wise?
So we've got some more string sessions coming in, which will be really cool. That's happening this month. I'm just in the middle of doing a couple of singles with a brilliant jazz singer called Ray Astaire, which we recorded the basics of last week, and then quite a bit more mastering stuff, which is probably anywhere from a third to half of what I've been doing the last couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's obviously being a drummer? What's the drums like there in that room? I bet it's amazing, isn't it?
The room was built with drums in mind. Yeah, they sound great. Have you seen pictures of the room?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got a nice high. I'm just looking at it now. It's got a nice high ceiling.
7 meters, I read on your website.
The highest point. Yeah, but all of the acoustic treatment is up in the ceiling, and so when people walk in, it's quite a dry sound for a space that big. But the low end, especially, if you put the drums in the right place and you've got a great sounding drummer and kit, you can place room mics in some really nice places, and you walk into the control room and it just hits you in the chest. It's a really exciting sound. Yeah, it sounds good for drums.
And what's your go-to mics for drums?
It varies, but I suppose that the old standby are a pair of 87s, U87s on the overheads, a large diaphragm mic on the kick, like a D12 or a D112. Nothing unusual, really.
57s and all the
57s, 441s. Yeah, in so many ways, and so much of it comes down to the drummer, really.
Yeah, and the tuning and stuff.
And and I think with drums, you can approach it with if you've got a drummer who is great and can balance themselves, then you can approach miking it up almost more as a photograph potentially, where you're capturing their performance. If you've got somebody and they're kind of, wailing away on the hi-hats and maybe not hitting the toms very loud, um, then you kind of, I wouldn't say damage control, but you might use some more microphones to give yourself somewhere to go with it, in post.
And do you use
Yeah.
any sort of samples or record the drummers being hit after individually?
Yeah, sometimes we'll take samples. Yeah, I mean, I'm up for whatever it takes to make it work.
Right. Okay.
So if the sample is what it needs, then that's fine. But I think in the genres that people tend to book me for, it's more the kind of rootsy stuff. It generally leans towards people playing live as a group because obviously we've got the facilities to do that, which means it's generally got a kind of a more band in a room vibe to it, as
Yeah.
opposed to something that's kind of like, more metally or something where it's very fast and precise and there may be more samples involved. But yeah, it's kind of whatever works, isn't it?
Right. And when you're mixing, do you hear the final product before you start, sort of thing, in your head?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. If it's something I've recorded, then even from the recording side, there'll be an element of that. If obviously it depends whether I'm going to be mixing it or someone else is going to be mixing it as to how far down that road you can go. But yeah, it's good to have a picture in mind for sure. Otherwise, you're just kind of moving faders and twiddling knobs.
And are you kind of mixing as you go along from the start?
Yeah, if it's something I am mixing, then yeah, I'll record it with that in mind. So I probably will record with some compression and EQ, and have it so that at least as a working mix, the faders are kind of lined up as close to zero as possible. I mean, I'm pretty lazy, Tommy. So the more you can do and not have to repeat, the better, right?
Yeah.
If you can do something once and then not have to do it again, that's in theory that's the good thing. I mean, it doesn't apply to all parts of my life, but certainly the music side, I do that on. Yeah.
And do you prefer mixing on the console or do you like mixing in the box?
Um, I'm pretty much hybrid these days, which means I'll I will use some stuff on the console basically because I enjoy it. But I love working in the computer as well. I think the console really comes into its own when you're recording because you can be so quick getting sounds on it. You can reach for something and give put some more top end on it, or you can make a cut on something, or you can combine a few different microphones together, and you can very quickly get balances up as well. But the stuff in the computer with automation is insanely good these days. And I don't think there's anything in it sonically. I really think maybe there is, but I think it comes down to how you like to work.
What's your sort of favourite plugins in the box? Is there any sort of companies you prefer more, or ones you go to
You know
straight
what?
away?
Sorry, it probably sounds a bit, naff or a stock answer, but there's so many that are great. I think you just choose your poison and run with them. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of. There's a company called Leapwing Audio that make some great plugins for mastering and mixing. But I mean, it really is. I've whatever works. I think it's whatever you're quick on, and probably like when you play your guitar, you want to have something. I would imagine that where everything is, so you're not thinking about it. You just you're working on feel rather than going, what does that do? So it's not always that often that I'll try out something new. Because you just want to be getting on with it.
Do you have a favourite reverb for like the snare?
Well, my favorite reverb is an EMT plate reverb that I have in the shed, which is this beautiful 1950s thing, and they're about 2 meters long, about a meter and a bit high, and they sound like nothing else. They're a nightmare to recall because they change sound when the temperature changes, so it will sound different in the winter than it will on a day like today. But yeah, there's something about the sound of those. It's just so organic.
Yeah. Is that like
Yeah,
well, I don't know it through the plugin again. Is that the MT?
that's what it is. That's what the plugin is based on. But they all sound different. They all sound totally different. It's like anything. You could. I mean, the plugins sound brilliant as well. The UAD EMT plugin is brilliant. It's an old one, but I think it sounds great.
With EQ, do you have an approach to using EQ? Do you prefer to cut or do you prefer to, boost?
Um, I guess it depends, which everybody probably says, right? If I'm mastering, I will most likely be cutting things to begin with because, but we're talking like really small amounts. Um, I think recording wise, I'm probably boosting more. Like if I'm just thinking if I'm like recording a drum kit or something. I mean the EQ on the SSL is great. So I'm probably going to be boosting a lot of stuff on the kick. Um, in fact, it's probably quite horrific if you see where some of the EQ knobs are versus what they use the minimum of stuff, and it can be like things can be fairly pushed. So yeah, I think the cutting thing is great for just trying to. You might want to get a bit more energy somewhere in the track, and sometimes cutting it a small amount somewhere else can really let that through.
Do you have a favourite reference album that you use? Like if you have to work away on different speakers, is there an album that you personally like?
So yeah, I mean, I there's a few. I love the Buena Vista Social Club album. That's actually one of the things that really made me want to record. That came out in like the late '90s because it just instantly. It's an acoustic album. You can kind of very quickly hear where things are. But to be honest, I generally only work out of here for the most part these days. Uh, and but I do have references that I use, but they're more for the edges of things. So, for example, there's a great Emmylou Harris track on I can't remember what it is now, but it's one that Daniel Lanois produced, and her vocal is so sibilant on that, but it's right on the edge of what you could do. So if I'm mixing something or mastering something, um, especially if it's been a long evening the night before or something, I just want to. I'm not sure where my ears are at. I've got like half a dozen little references that I'll use. Like, oh well, that the low end on that is about as much as I would want on anything. That's about as much top end before it gets really fatiguing. That's a great place where the vocal's sitting. That's about the most dynamic thing I would go for. I know this particular track sounds really crushed. So I've got references that I use for that. Yeah, and what's nice about those is they don't have to be in the style of, because you're just using them for like, where's the line down the road,
Yeah,
really.
like tones, like how deep they are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And you don't even need to listen to very much of them. Sometimes just 15, 20 seconds just to kind of recenter yourself can be. I think if you do audio a lot in that sense where you're having to listen, then any little tricks you can have to kind of get yourself kind of back into the zone and where you trust your ears again is important, because some days can be quite long, and it's like anything, your ears can only take so much. So if you can find some techniques to kind of make your working day go a bit longer, sometimes that can be good.
Well, jumping with that, is there a certain listening level at which you master at and mix at?
Yeah, there is. It I mean, I don't know exactly. Well, on the console I've got here has got I suppose you'd call it a calibrated monitor prop, which means if I put it at 7, it's always going to be the same level if I'm playing music of a certain level. So it's around 83 dB is
Okay.
where I'm listening.
And that's both with
In
mixing
fact,
and mastering?
yeah, yeah, but I won't. I mean, it's just not a massive room, so I won't be listening to that at that level all the time because I wouldn't have any ears left. But around that level is where I'll go to for certain points, and then I'll come back down. And what's nice about that is that you can feel where if you work in a room long enough, you kind of know if I'm at that level and the speakers are doing this to me as a physical thing, then that's kind of where that wants to be. So I kind of go there a few times and then try and back off and not be working there all the time.
Oh, right, okay. And how many different sets of speakers do you listen through?
There's only a couple. There's a set of kind of bigger three ways, which are not they're not soffit mounted or anything. And then there's just a little kind of set of Auratone style speakers.
Right, so with the mastering sides, what is mastering and why do we need to have it done?
You know what? I actually Googled some answers to this because I figured you would probably ask. And it's not actually it's as well. Okay, so I suppose the boring answer is it's the final step of the kind of audio production process, and also the first step of the manufacturing process. if that makes any sense. So I think there are two bits of it. There's the kind of the artistic, creative audio side, and then there's like a real technical side to it as well, um, which I think is what attracts me. It's the combination of both, you know. So the I suppose at the most basic level, it's for me anyway. It's trying to enhance whatever the emotion that the songwriter or the artist is trying to get over. It's trying to enhance that and put the listener in the same space with them. So that could be it could be anything as involved as, you know, trying to make a vocal just pokes her a little bit more so it feels more intimate, like you're singing directly to me. It could be bringing the kick drum level out a bit so that I move to it a bit more. It could be taming the sibilance on a guitar or a vocal so that I want to turn the track up to enjoy it rather than feel I'm being shouted at and have to turn it down. So there's that side of it.
What
But
tools
there's
do you
also
use to do them sort of things? Is that mostly EQ and compression?
yeah, it's. I mean, I can talk you through some of them, but I mean, it's. I think it's really the philosophy, probably more than the tools. You know, you can do it with anything, basically, if you learn it. And then the technical side would be delivering it in the right formats. So it might be even this today. It's, you know, CD, Apple Digital Masters, vinyl, pre-masters. I do a lot of all of that side of stuff, and also QCing stuff as well, so that, you know, if you're delivering something that's going to get pressed to, you know, however many thousands of copies, it has to be okay because the buck kind of falls on you, you know, if not. So does that kind of describe it in a clear way?
Yeah, yeah. I always see it as just, you know, like it enhances the things that are needed, like the low end or the top end, or, you know,
I mean, the
and
kind of the other version is you make it louder and shinier, right?
yes, fairy dust. Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
And also the putting together of the songs in all that, like how long the gaps are in between, and if one's going to go straight into the next song, and all that stuff is all part of the mastering process.
Absolutely. Although, of course, and it's great when you can work on an album like that. And I do a lot of stuff for a great producer called Andy Lewis, who was bass player in Paul Weller's band for about 10 years, and he does lots of Northern Soul and acid jazz stuff. And nearly every album that I get to work on with him is there's segues and crossfades, and it's like a real involved. It's a real art, and it's great. It's time consuming, but really enjoyable. And then there's sometimes you're just working on stuff and it's a single, so you don't get that element of it, you know.
When you're mastering for things like Spotify and Amazon and all them, are they all totally different from your perspective, from the levels and all that stuff, dithering, encoding, and
Well, the one that is kind of technically slightly different is mastered for iTunes, which is now called Apple Digital Masters. Um, but what they want is really very simple. They just want something that doesn't go above a certain level, so that when they encode it, it doesn't sound crunchy. And they kind of want a high res version. I'm guessing what you're hinting at is the average level or the loudness units of
well, yeah,
stuff.
because if musicians are watching this and doing stuff at home in the, you know,
Yeah,
it's just so that because it's a question that seems to come up quite a lot.
yeah. So without trying to be coy about it, they kind of change a lot. So I kind of keep up to date with where things are. So I think, you know, Apple, they have a loudness unit, which is like a basically, I don't know all the technicalities of it. Perhaps I should, but it is a unit that various people have agreed upon for measuring the average loudness over a period of time. So Apple might, I mean, and you can get all these levels just by Googling stuff. So Apple might be minus 16, Tidal might be minus 14, loudness units full scale is what the full thing is. But I think the main thing is I don't pay a ton of attention to that. I kind of learn about it and then just try and make it sound so it sounds great, because you could be producing, you know, production master. You could have half a dozen different production masters and then find out that you've done one for Spotify, and in a year's time Spotify have totally changed the way they're measuring the loudness and encoding it. So I think the main thing is really just to make something that sounds and feels great, and then it will be okay.
On all platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, sometimes music should sound loud and aggressive and crushed because that's how we're used to hearing it, and it should sound like that. And then other times you want some space for it to breathe. and the dynamics are going to come through. I think as well. I mean, I think vinyl is probably one area where there's space for some more dynamics because, apart from if people are going to, buy it just to hang on the wall and be cool, which is fine. You know, I mean, you've got singles and stuff that are going to get played in clubs, and obviously they want to be, reasonably loud. But if someone's going to put an album on, for example, and listen to it, then they're generally going to be sat between their speakers and they're going to want to have a real listening experience. So certainly the vinyl masters that I do have got more dynamic range in them. But it's something that I've tried not to get too caught up in. It's and the other thing as well with some labels you can do stuff and it can be within a certain range, but they want it louder.
Can you tell me a bit about Dithering? Because I don't know too much about that.
Well, yeah, as much as I can.
I mean, do you ever prefer that you use for Dithering?
I use for doing sample rate conversions and stuff. I use a program called Izotope Rx. But I'm not the best person to ask on this because I use the tools and I learn enough about them, but I'm not the most technical, unfortunately, which is probably sacrilege. But basically, as far as I understand, you use dither when you're changing. I'm hoping I'm right in this. The word length or something. So if you're going from 24-bit to say 16-bit or 32-bit to 24-bit, and it's a very low-level noise that just covers up the distortion that can be created with that. So, I mean, there are engineers that have will go through and they'll be able to tell you, oh, I use a triangular dither or I use a whatever, dodecahedron dither. Sadly, that's not me. I'm quite happy to let them do that bit and then listen to what they say and go do it.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. I just didn't really know what it was.
It's a cool question though, but yeah, no, sorry, I can't give you a better answer on that.
So I know that CDs and that were, is it 44.1?
That's right. Yeah, the sample rate is 44.1 kilohertz.
And obviously when we record like the albums, they're like 24-bit. So it's the dropping down from like the 24 down to sort of the CD standard, say 44.1.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Well, you've got sample rate, which is the number of times the audio is like photographed, if you like, or recorded per second.
Right.
And then you've bit depth, which is the different levels of I don't know.
Let's move on.
You got to cut that, that's fine.
People ask me stuff about guitar pedals and stuff. I don't have a clue.
Well, the thing is, I kind of feel like, I mean, and this is worth leaving in if you want. I feel I should know. Part of me, the imposter bit of me, feels I should know how to wire up a compressor or how to repair a power supply and why all this stuff works. And I think I probably should, because it probably gives you more freedom to know why things are interacting a certain way and what to do about them. And it's like that age-old argument about, do you read music or not read music? Well, I do read music, and to me, there's no disadvantage in reading music. I can chart something out quickly. I can visualize, I can communicate stuff. It doesn't make me less good at improvising. But I'm on the gear side, again, it probably goes back to the laziness. I know how to use the tools for me, and I can be very quick at getting them to do certain things. And so I've kind of always focused more on that than the why do they do it, which is not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you can bluff your way through.
No, because at the end of the day, your ears are the thing, aren't they? And obviously what you're putting out sounds great. So that's it.
Well, I think what is really cool about the teaching thing, starting to get into that, is that there are lots of things I'm having to go back and read up on and check out. For example, asking the question about dither, that is such a basic, reasonable thing to ask. And it should be just, oh yeah, dither is this and this. So, it's I think that's one good thing that will come for me from the education side as well.
Yeah.
Some more education.
Well, you never stop learning, so.
Yeah, that's true.
What should a band look for while shopping for a mastering engineer? What should they expect to be provided when hiring a mastering engineer?
I think word of mouth. I think recommendation is probably the best thing, because everybody and their dog are offering mastering these days, aren't they?
But would it be wrong to ask, as a musician, to ask someone to sample, not sample, but to master a bit of one of the songs and then maybe go another guy
No,
and ask?
no, absolutely not. And I do that sometimes as well, and it's something I offer to people.
Like a taster,
Don't
just to see what the difference
Yeah,
is.
absolutely. I mean, I think it's worth speaking with someone on the phone and just seeing if you like them, and if they're interested in your project and if they sound like they're excited about working on it. Because I think that is a lot of it. It's enthusiasm for working on it. And then after that, I guess it's just listening to what people have done.
And then what do they
Because
get back from you? What do you provide them with at the end of it?
so it depends what they need. But if it were a label, it would be um, most likely a CD DDP, which is the files that the CD can get pressed from, probably be a vinyl master. There'd be Apple Digital Music masters that would be at a higher rate. There'd be some online distribution masters, probably even do some MP3s. And then you might have alternates as well. So there might be kind of TV mixes, a cappella mixes, there might be cut downs. It depends. Some projects, a 10-track album can be 100 tracks, 100 deliverables that you do. On the other hand, if it's an indie artist and it's a single, it might just be 2 or 3 files.
Listening to music all day must be hard for your ears. Does working as an audio professional affect your personal listening habits? Do you find you can't switch off when listening to music for pleasure?
Yeah, a little bit. So I don't listen to probably as much music as I should out of the studio. I listen to audiobooks and podcasts, and dare I say it, channels like yours, Tommy, as well. Um, yeah, I guess it's that thing, isn't it? If you're a pro tennis player and you go and watch a tennis match, part of you is going to be analyzing things about it. Um, so yeah, I sometimes do, and I sometimes go to a gig and I'll get nudged, and Petra, my better half, will remind me that the mix doesn't matter. We're there to enjoy the music.
Oh dear. So you say audiobooks. What audiobooks you been listening to?
Oh, I've been listening what I've been listening to, just some kind of um some kind of businessy ones, trying to get my head into that a little bit more. I'm trying to think of any, none are coming to mind right now. And then just kind of, just mindless ones like John Grisham thrillers, just when I'm out walking, just to, be totally brain dead with. And then podcasts, lots of audio kind of studio ones, because we're all even before lockdown, I would still be in here working on my own. So there's various podcasts like that are quite nice because you feel there's a bit of a community thing going on, even if you're still listening to it on your own. Um, yeah, so just a mixture of stuff, really.
When musicians send you their final mix, how do you like to have it? Is there a specific way you like it presented?
So, um, yeah, well, ideally, if they've been working on it themselves, it's nice if they just send me the file at whatever format they've been working in. So, say they've been working in Logic and it's like a 24-bit 44.1K file. Some people will say, "Oh, do you want me to sample it up to 96K or whatever?" And I'm like, "Well, no, just send me what you've been working on, because I can probably handle the conversion of it better, basically." Um, as far as leaving kind of, there'll be some mastering engineers I've come across that say, "Oh, take any compression off and any EQ on the master bus. I don't want any of that." That's not me. I kind of think if you've been mixing with a compressor or a limiter on there, that's probably really integral to the sound. And if you're sending it to master, it's because you already like how the mix sounds, right? So why change it? The only thing I would say is if you're a mix engineer, we all get used to sending off things to clients with some limiting that's on there just for loudness. So that, for example, if Mike Exeter sends you a mix, he's probably put some limiting on it so that when you play it back next to your favorite album, it doesn't sound ridiculously quiet. And I always say, well, it's nice to get a version of the mix with the limiting on, if there's a limiter just for loudness, with that, so I can hear what everybody's been listening to, but also perhaps a version without that. But I mean, not really. Other than that, it's just, I'm trying to make what they do sounds better. So it's not, there's no detailed thing really. It's just send me what you've got, and if we need a bit of back and forth on it, then we will. Try and make it easy.
I've got some quick fire questions for you. Let's see how we.
Go.
Superman or Batman?
Batman. Where did that come from?
Yeah. In the box or out the box?
In the box.
Do you think opposites truly attract?
Yeah.
Impulsive or methodical?
A little from column A and a little bit from column B.
Okay. Reverb on the snare, yes or no?
Yes. Yeah, that big kind of RMX gated reverb sound.
Yeah.
It's great on blues records. No, not really.
Do you text or call?
I should probably text more than I call. I'd have more time in the evenings if I texted rather than called.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you a morning or night person?
Well, morning. Yeah. Strangely. I've just discovered that recently.
Cookies or cake?
Cake.
Cake. Do you think chemistry is instant or grows with time?
I think it grows with time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Give us the thumbs up.
Let me do the thumbs up. There you go. Thumbs up.
Hey! See you later.
Take care, my friend.
Bye.
See you, buddy. Bye.
Hey, it's Tommy Allen from TommyAllenMusic.com, and that was Mike Thorne. You can find out more about him and his studio at www.rimshotstudio.co.uk. Next week, we have Chris Corcoran, the guitarist, plays jazz, blues, West Coast style, right here on Tommy Allen Music. So please give us a like, hit the subscribe button. Until next week, a word from our director.